What's going on, guys? This is Ryan with the RK Outpost, and Ghostbusters 2016 was an absolute failure, an unmitigated disaster. Even though the critics were trying to convince everyone to go watch this movie, that it was groundbreaking, that because of the diversity, it's required that you go watch this movie. Audiences didn't buy it. Audiences didn't show up, and the ones that did really regretted it. Incredibly divisive. So when the time came for them to make another Ghostbusters movie, they decided to take it back to basics, wipe the slate clean, and not include anything from Ghostbusters 2016. And we saw a lot of people get very upset about that. We saw the mainstream media get mad that they wiped away the legacy of the female Ghostbusters. And of course, we even saw some of the stars themselves, like Leslie Jones out there, saying that the new sequel is insulting because Ghostbusters 3 will be set in the original universe of the first two films and will not follow on from the recent female-led reboot. And why would it? When you look at Ghostbusters 2016, it was a failure. $230 million worldwide on a $150 million budget. This movie lost over $100 million. It was a travesty. It was a failure. And this was one of the first times in 2016 where people really started to realize there is a divide between the critics and the audiences. They look for different things, with the critics so clearly looking for diversity, representation, identity politics, everything like that. And then the time came for Ghostbusters Afterlife, and what do you know? When you get back to basics, when you honor the past, when you honor all these characters that are the reason that people are fans of the franchise, they like it. What a shock. Who would have known that if you actually listen to the audience, if you actually listen to the fans and give them what you want, they'll actually like it. And you can see that the critics might not be so happy about that, especially when we go over to top critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a very drastic drop off. The difference usually isn't this big between all critics and top critics, but the top critics did not like Ghostbusters Afterlife. And of course, you see the audience, 95%. Now, I did a review of Ghostbusters Afterlife right after I got out of the theater. I don't really think it's a great movie. I think I gave it a 6.5. I didn't like the fact that it focused so much on the kids, just straight up did not like that. However, with that being said, even where this movie fails, in my opinion, you can tell that it's done with love, it's done with dedication, it's done with the goal in mind to remind everybody of those movies, to honor, truly honor the past, not just use it necessarily for a cheap nostalgia grab, although there's a ton of nostalgia in here. A lot of it is done in a loving and caring way. I ultimately don't think it told the story that it should have told. I think it should have been more focused on around 30-year-old people than on 12 and 15-year-old people. That's just me. I wasn't looking for Goonies. I was looking for Ghostbusters again. But with all that being said, this is a clear indication that when you do listen to the fans, when you reject the woke critics, when you depart from the woke critics, people do like it. And by talking to everybody else, I may be one of the people that likes it the least out of all the Ghostbusters fans I've come across. A lot of people love this. When you walk out of the theater, you can't help but feel emotional about what you've just witnessed and the tribute that they paid to the old cast. Phenomenal job. Now, the box office may be a little bit different story, but even this I do think is a win overall for this franchise. Ghostbusters Afterlife trapping $40+ million opening weekend, Saturday AM update, and of course Sunday morning update right here. Jason Reitman's Ghostbusters Afterlife is beating its $30 to $35 million industry expectations with an expected $40.5 million opening weekend after a $16.5 million Friday, which does include Thursday previews. Of that figure, PLF screens and IMAX are driving 35% of the gross for the Sony movie. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's quite frankly not a lot. Some people thought that this movie was going to do like Eternals opening weekend numbers. I never thought that. I thought that if it hit 50, that would be incredible, like blow me away. I'd be shocked. I think that'd be a great success if it hit a $50 million weekend, for the simple fact that this movie only cost $70 to $75 million to make. We talked about Ghostbusters 2016 before. Nearly $150 million budget. This movie is half of that, and it is still tracking nearly the same at the box office. If we do go to the box office for Ghostbusters, that first weekend, $46 million. Right now, this one's looking a little bit over 40, so fairly comparable. And based on the feedback, based on how people are talking about this movie, I wouldn't be surprised if it had some good long legs underneath it as well, at least better legs than we saw for this one. But I do think that $230 million should be the target for Ghostbusters Afterlife. If it does more than that, it's a very clear indication of a rejection of the woke identity politics driven garbage, and instead embracing getting back to basics and people honoring the legacy of these franchises, honoring these characters. So I think that $40+ million number, a little higher than was predicted by the industry, I think overall that's a positive for them. If they can't get to that $230 million, I don't want to hear about COVID, don't want to hear about all that stuff. If they can't get to that, I do think people will probably look at this as a little bit of a failure, honestly. Because if you can't outdo Ghostbusters 2016, the garbage that was that movie, well, then maybe you've just run this franchise in the ground. Ghostbusters, I don't think needs to be a franchise. I've never really thought it should be. I think it's truly lightning in a bottle. But it's clear that anything with any bit of nostalgia, people are going to try to get the most they can out of it. I think that although I didn't agree with the way they decided to make this movie, I didn't like all the kids. I thought it was pretty cringe at times, just not a big fan of the humor they used in it. I do think that overall you could tell that there was love and care and dedication that went into the making of this. The opposite of what we've seen from Star Trek and Star Wars and all these other franchises that have been bastardized over the years. It was definitely, obviously, a course correction. And that's why some of these people are so damn mad about it, because they tried to tell you to go watch 2016. Nobody went. And then they tried to tell you not to go and see Ghostbusters Afterlife. But obviously, people are still loving this. People are still going out. 38% on Top Critics is crazy. They're obviously very mad that people aren't upset that the female Ghostbusters are just forgotten. Spoiler alert, news flash, no one cares about the 2016 movie. People despised it, people hated it, and they are ready to move on. This is a clear indication that once again, people should be listening to the fans and not the critics, not anybody in the industry that wants to push diversity, representation, whatever. Listen to your fans and listen to your audience. We can only hope that it does play dividends in the box office. Doesn't need to make a lot to break even, only about $200 million or so. I think it'll definitely get that. Hopefully it pushes past Ghostbusters 2016 as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and a huge shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram? Check out the description below. You'll find links to my P.O. box and my Patreon as well. And I'll talk to you guys later.